Arezki's podcasts, where we discuss the present, the past, and maybe the future of North Africa and the Sahel region. My name is Arezki Daoud, and I am principal analyst at Arezki LLC, and I'm also the founder and editor of the North Africa Journal. Now join me every week for a new episode that addresses the root causes of instability in the region and beyond, and let's see if we can find solutions to complex crises. Welcome again. Greetings to this episode of Week in Review, a quick summary of what we're currently tracking in the Sahel and in North Africa. Today is Saturday, the 7th of January 2023, and once again, Happy New Year. Well, this past week was somewhat subdued in the region, largely to the year-end holiday season and to the shift from 2022 to 2023. But events don't stop simply because it's the new year. The big stories of the week include that of an unfolding emigration crisis in the Mediterranean Sea. The immigration crisis in the region continues, with a substantial percentage of North Africans wishing to flee their country for the obvious reasons based on a number of surveys. Those reasons include lack of economic prospects, regimes that favor repression, and lack of personal freedoms. The saddest event this week was the recovery of the bodies of 13 Moroccan nationals who failed to reach Spain's Canary Islands in an attempted sea crossing. Their ill-fated boat carried 45 would-be migrants, with 24 of them eventually rescued. Also this week on the immigration front in general, specifically in the north of Morocco, dozens of people breached the border and entered into Melilla, an enclave under the control of Spain. And within Spain itself, the police arrested a criminal gang of 43 people in Malaga who allegedly used and abused undocumented migrants working in the farming sector. Those victims are mainly from Morocco. The gang was involved in selling false documents. In 2022, a little more than 31,000 people entered Spain illegally, and most arrived by boat from Morocco, a number that has to be said was down by more than 25% over 2021, according to the Moroccan government. My personal concern is not necessarily related to the legality or the documentation aspects of migrants. That's a government enforcement affair. But it's more about the risks that exists during the sea crossings, and then what happens to them when they reach Spain or France or other countries where they potentially face forced labor and abuse. In late June, at least 23 people died trying to reach Spain, many of whom were sub-Saharan nationals, including Sudanese. Caminando Fronteras, pardon the bad accent, a Spanish NGO that tracks migrant movements, calculated that more than 11,200, a little over 11,000 migrants have died or have gone missing while trying to reach Spain since 2018. That's an average of 6 people per day, according to an AFP calculation. Obviously, the migrant crisis is not just a Moroccan problem. Algeria has also seen a growing number of would-be migrants, mostly headed to Spain due to the proximity of the country's northwest coast to the Spanish coast. Caminando Fronteras puts the number of deaths and disappeared that originated from Algeria and headed to Spain at roughly 1,500, a little over 1,500. It's the same problem with Tunisia, where would-be migrants target southern Italy instead, not Spain, but southern Italy, in particular the island of Lampedusa. Nearly 23,000 migrants had been intercepted from January to October 2022, that's last year. Libya has certainly been a huge source of illegal migrants. Recently, the Libyan Navy has intercepted a fishing boat carrying no less than 650 migrants of different nationality, including people from Bangladesh, from Syria, from Egypt, etc. Some 14,000 migrants had been intercepted and returned to Libya from January to October 2022. Big numbers. North African governments have had a rather ambiguous positions on how to deal with people leaving for Europe without proper documentation. Positions that go from using illegal migrants to advance their respective regional interests to punishing them. Morocco and Algeria in particular have been using these waves of migrants headed to Europe, in particular Spain, as a foreign policy tool to pressure European nations on issues such as the Western Sahara conflict. In this crisis, they have weaponized illegal immigration to convince the Europeans to support their respective positions. But the regimes in North Africa have also established laws that are, in my opinion, highly punitive to migrants. Morocco has handed dozens of migrants sentences of up to 3 years in prison on charges including illegal entry and violence against law enforcement officers over the 24th of June tragedy, according to AFP. Amnesty International said the Moroccans, but also the Spanish authorities, used excessive force during the June incident. Algeria has also been issuing prison sentences. Libya is also accused by human rights groups for its ill treatment of migrants and placing them inside awful detention centers. So as we look at 2023, we should not expect a major easing in the migrant crisis. Governments in the region continue to harden their policies on the human rights front, and their economies, let's be realistic here, will remain challenged in the foreseeable future, forcing essentially people, young and old, to look for better horizons on the other side of the Mediterranean Sea. Speaking of human rights abuses, an Egyptian court sentenced this week popular Egyptian actor Mena Chalabi to a 1-year prison sentence after it found her guilty of cannabis possession. Chalabi was arrested back in November 2022 at Cairo airport with cannabis-infused products while returning from the United States. These products include lollipops and snacks, according to AFP. From my perspective, the whole affair is laughable, even though I recognize that people should know that they must comply with local laws, no matter how outdated or ridiculous they may be. For those who know Egypt well, you must know that while cannabis is illegal, it's widely used there. Of course, that's not an excuse to break the law. Now, staying on the issue of human rights, specifically in Tunisia, the presidency of Kais Saied there appears to be in a permanent state of crisis. Some analysts even say that Tunisia is Algerianizing itself. By that they mean the Tunisian president is replicating the repressive policies of the Algerian regime towards the opposition with their zero tolerance to criticism. This week, President Saied said his administration was using the judiciary to close down opposition to his rule after several inquiries were opened against the members of the opposition. Already 4 leaders of the opposition group, the National Salvation Front, including its president, have been summoned for an investigation. The party's leader had last month called for Saied to step down after a December legislative election that ended with a record low turnout of less than 11%. Also, a lawyer who is defending a group of judges fired by Kais Saied has also said he is under investigation for allegedly spreading false rumors, and I'm quoting here, in order to undermine public security, according to AFP. The lawyer, Ayashi Hamami, said his summons was essentially based on a controversial decree that Saied issued in September, which provide for stiff prison sentences for anyone spreading false information or false rumors in the media or online. In Morocco, the big story was about a European Parliament worker who happens to be the boyfriend of an arrested Greek member of parliament who implicated the kingdom in a corruption scandal. The story did not make it into the Moroccan media, and the government there made no big statement about the allegation. Allegations against Morocco and Qatar as having bribed members of the European Parliament to influence them surfaced a few weeks ago when Belgian police raided several sites used by MEPs, MEPs stand for a member of the European Parliament, and their networks of lobbyists. Some 1.5 million euros were recovered in what authorities alleged to be payoffs made by foreign nations to influence decisions in the European Parliament. Qatar was mentioned front and center, resulting in the arrest of 4 suspects, including Greek MEP Eva Kaili. AFP says her Italian boyfriend, Francesco Giorgi, a parliamentarian aide in Belgium, had reportedly made a confession to Belgian prosecutors implicating Morocco in the corruption case, essentially indicating that MEPs received money from Morocco to help advance its policies. Now, shifting gear to those of you who want to travel to Morocco from China or vice versa, you are out of luck. Morocco began banning entry to all travelers from China this week, where cases of COVID-19 have exploded. The move is a bit more severe than what, say, France, Britain, the US, and Spain did, and that is to require negative COVID tests to all travelers from mainland China. Obviously, the weak trade between China and Morocco and the low tourism inflow of Chinese in Morocco are perfect reason for Morocco not to worry about the consequences of banning travelers coming from China. Let's move to the Sahel now, where the situation was generally quiet also, although we note an important but expected event, and that is the pardoning by Mali's junta leader of all the 49 Ivorian soldiers who were sentenced last week by a Malian court to 20 years in prison. They were accused of being mercenaries. Their arrest resulted in a diplomatic conflict that risked worsening had Mali kept them in prison. Instead, junta chief Colonel Assimi Goïta granted a pardon with full remission of sentences to all the 49 Ivorian soldiers, including 3 women. The sequencing of events here suggests that the Mali leadership may have been looking to score points with both Ivory Coast and the West African group of nations called ECOWAS. There's no doubt in my mind that Colonel Goïta could have prevented the trial from taking place, but he allowed it to happen so that at the end he appears to be as the one who solved the crisis and therefore scoring points among regional powers, the United States, Europe, etc. It's now unclear what kind of concessions Mali obtained from ECOWAS, but I'm confident that Colonel Goïta got something out of it, at least some pledge not to blockade Mali as its relations with ECOWAS had already been severely strained over the toppling of elected President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta back in August 2020. On the security front, there has been some worrying development with a jihadist attack in the southeast of Mali. 2 firefighters and 3 civilians were killed on Monday night in an attack on the civil protection road rescue post of Markakungo in the Bamako-Ségou road. The bad news about this event is that it took place just less than 70 kilometers from Bamako, that's less than 44 miles from the nation's capital, a move that essentially confirms ongoing efforts by the jihadists to target the capital city Bamako. Perhaps one of the biggest issues facing the region as we start 2023 is the state of the economy. By the region, I mean North Africa in general. Possibly the most vulnerable nations, in my opinion, are Tunisia and Egypt, to a lesser extent Morocco, or Algeria is breathing a sigh of relief as it will likely see its foreign currency reserves expand with the global demand for natural gas expanding as well. The money it generates, that is Algeria, will probably buy social peace But in other nations, well, at least for now, but in other nations, the situation spans from moderate to severe difficulty. For Morocco this year, it's expected to be another tough year on the economic front. Global trade and business trends point to an outlook of poor performance for the economy in 2023 as a result of exports likely to fall by at least 1.1%, in addition to a contraction in the prices of phosphates and derivatives. The forecast comes from the board of the country's central bank, Bank al-Maghrib, in its third quarterly meeting held recently, also indicating that imports would decrease by 4.6% in 2023. In a press release following the board meeting, the central bank has also forecast an increase of 34.5% in the value of imports by the end of 2022. We're waiting for the numbers, as the country's energy bill is to rise to 135.1 billion dirhams. Spending on semi-products is also expected to rise to 167 billion dirhams. In a nutshell, the money is being spent, income is decreasing in general. The bank blames, obviously, COVID pandemic and the Russian war on Ukraine for a deteriorating economic climate, noting the persistence of high prices of energy and food products, as well as disruptions in the global supply chains, is weighing significantly on the Moroccan economy. Domestically, the central bank lamented the continued drought. On the positive side, though, the bank anticipates an improvement in the tourism sector, which will boost that sector's revenue to a little less than 80 billion dirhams this year. In Tunisia, the situation is more complex and more severe, and the country faces a year of low economic growth and growing inflation. With empty coffers, Tunisia is negotiating with the IMF an emergency bailout valued at $2 billion. The country is highly affected by a heavy debt burden, accounting for almost 90% of its gross domestic product, or GDP. Just like Morocco, the COVID pandemic and Russia's invasion of Ukraine have had a tough impact on Tunisia, a situation worsened by the spiraling cost of commodities and energy. But as usual, the IMF is attaching conditions to any loan, including restructuring more than 100 state-owned firms, which hold monopolies over many parts of the economy and in many cases are heavily indebted. In Tunisia, the problem is political. That is, the moment the Tunisian political elite find a solution on how to govern, they can easily tackle economic issues with the help of their economic partners. The population there in Tunisia, that is only slightly above or 12 million. In Egypt, the population is headed towards 110 million. This demographic difference is absolutely critical in that it is a time bomb for the Sisi military regime in Egypt. Today, repressive policies of the Egyptian military are what keep the system in place. But the economy is in such disarray that I do not rule out social unrest to erupt this year. The country is currently facing a severe dollar crunch and out-of-control food prices. The situation is so bad that the media reported that the government is promoting chicken feet as a good source of protein. A marketing campaign is underway in Egypt with a tagline of, and I'm quoting, "Chicken feet, good for the body and for the budget." End of quote. Of course, the government of Sisi is looking for easy way out of this crisis by raising more debt, asking the IMF to loan it another $3 billion. But for the average Egyptian, daily life is awful, with food prices doubling, tripling, even quadrupling, affecting such staples as cooking oil and legumes. So one way of dealing with the crisis has been a Sisi policy of lowering the value of the Egyptian pound. That has had the effect of attracting investors looking to buy assets, pennies on the dollar. Just imagine a building in Cairo used to be priced at, say, for example, just for the sake of simplicity, $1 million. The devaluation of the Egyptian pound meant that the same building can now be purchased by foreign investors, not at the original price, but half of it. Imagine for a moment how these global investors would react when the IMF, the UAE, Saudi Arabia agreed to loan Egypt billions of dollars. Investors will have confidence. They will have no problem grabbing assets on the basis of pennies on the dollar. But over the past year, Egypt's economy was hit hard by the effects of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, unsettling the same global investors who were bullish in the beginning about Egypt, and now forcing them to pull billions of dollars out of Egypt. When you want to play in globalization game, you must be ready for it. But then again, when a country is ruled by generals and the military, what do you expect? Meanwhile, Egypt is now importing its wheat at premium prices, while its dollar reserves has been on a free fall and the value of the pound continues to plummet. The situation is so bad that AFP reports that 2 state-owned banks announced a 1-year savings certificate with an extraordinary 25% interest rate. 25% interest rate. So here's what AFP says about that. And I'm quoting, Egypt has been looking for foreign currency where it can. Starting this month, tourists will have to pay for train tickets in dollars. And many banks have limited foreign currency withdrawals and tripled credit card charges. So what kind of money does Egypt has in reserve? What it has in its coffers amount to about $33 billion, but almost all of it, or $28 billion, are deposits owned by the likes of Saudi Arabia and the UAE. On the other side, Egypt's foreign debt stands at about $157 billion, which tripled in just 10 years. That's what happens when governance is controlled by the military. Well, we can keep talking about the disastrous Egyptian economy, but we have a long year ahead to get into more details. For our premium subscribers, a special podcast looks at Morocco as a prospect for filming location destination. As the year 2023 looks to be a difficult one on the economic front, Morocco has been working to attract foreign movie studios eager to take advantage of its natural settings, low-cost opportunities, tax exemptions, etc. Industry insiders expect 2022 revenues from shooting movies and documentaries in Morocco to exceed the billion dirhams, or about $100 million, up 25% from 2019. They're betting the current momentum could further accelerate and reach revenues of up to 1.3 billion dirhams in 2023, thanks to the tax support policy recently rolled out by the government, reducing taxes for filming in Morocco by 30%. Can that be achieved? Well, if you're a subscriber, you can access the podcast at north-africa.com/category/podcasts. Again, it's north-africa.com/category/podcasts. And with that, thank you for listening. And until our next episode, goodbye. Thank you for listening. To subscribe to our podcast series, please visit mea-risk.com/audio. That is mea-risk.com/audio to find out more. If you are interested in a 6-month trial for our critical incident awareness and notification system, please visit shield-alert.com. That is shield-alert.com. Until our next podcast, thank you and goodbye.